Hi, this is Carrie with Canary Quilts, and I wanted to introduce you to this week's Friday freebie. I'm calling this the Turkey Trot Table Topper. This is a really quick and easy sew. It is all applique on, and the layers are sandwiched and sewn together and turned, so there is no binding to this little quilt, which makes it a lot faster to put together. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to do this little quilt. So if you would like to put this together, head over to my website, canaryquilts.com, and you can grab this free little pattern. Thank you very much for watching this video. Welcome to Canary Quilts. You can get our free patterns in our free resource library located at canaryquilts.com. You can access this from the library access page. Scroll down the page to sign up for a free password to enter our free resource library, or click to enter the free resource library. Once in our free resource library, you will have access to all our free patterns and downloads. We put out a new free pattern every Friday. I hope you enjoy this video, and please subscribe to our channel so you will be notified of all our new content. Thank you. To get started with our little Turkey Trot Table Topper, I wanted to show you what I'm going for. I did this up on the computer, but it's going to be about 18 inches wide, so I couldn't print it out on a piece of paper. So I took a picture of it for you. So that's what I'm going for. I've got my materials laid out here. I printed out my pieces too. So this is the feathers, and I'm going to need 22 of these. And then I've got his tie, his little gobbler, whatever that's called, his beak, his eyes, the background to his body, and his body right here. And then this is the background on the entire little table topper. I haven't picked out my backing to this yet, but I'll do that at a different time. So I've also gone ahead and cut out all of the steam-a-seam, the light steam-a-seam 2 I'm going to need to applique him onto the background here. So I've got all my little pieces here, and then I've got all 22 pieces for the feathers, and then the 2 body parts. So what we want to do is we want to trace out our pieces here that we've printed out onto our light steam-a-seam 2, and then we will, once they're traced, we'll lightly iron them onto our fabric so that we can cut them out. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of these, all my little pieces marked onto my light steam-a-seam 2. Okay, I've got all my pieces cut, and I've got my images traced onto my light steam-a-seam 2, and I'm going to peel off the paper that's non-gridded and then just lay it on the back of my piece of fabric till I get over to the sewing machine. And then the iron, and then I'm going to just lightly iron for about 2 to 3 seconds, and that should adhere the glue from the paper onto the fabric. And then I can cut my pieces out from there. So I'm going to get all of these glued on and ready to cut. Okay, so I've got all my pieces, all my light steam-a-seam 2 adhered to my pieces of fabric. And so then what I'm going to do is cut them all out, and that's what it looks like once it's cut out. So I'm going to get to it. I got a lot of cutting to do. Okay, I've got all my pieces cut out here. I've got my feathers, my tail, my body, my eyes, beak, whatever that little gobbly thing is, and his tie. So what I can do is I can take the paper off these and stick them in place where I want them. And they will come up if you want to move them in the future. And if the sticky stuff doesn't come out on your fabric, then just give it another iron. Couple seconds. So I know his eyes look a little bland now, but we'll be taking some thread with our machine and just putting some little pupils in there. So we can lay our little items out here, and I think this little gobbler thing, and I know it has a name, I can't remember what it is. I want it to go underneath my beak. So I'm just going to lift that up. Put it down, and then do that. So there's his face. Now we'll get his tie on. There, that little guy's done. And I mean, he'll get this stuff will stick on it, and they'll get ironed on when we do all the ironing. So it's basically just gonna, you can lay your colors out now if you want. Kind of lay out where you want it to go so you know when you start putting it on, when you start sticking it down, you'll know where they go. Okay, so at this point you can just kind of play with your layout, or if you like it, I would just take a picture of it, and that way you know, you can remember how you put it down. So from this point we're going to cut our background, and then we're going to start sticking this guy onto our background. Just kept alternating putting these down, and I just lifted this and put it underneath the circle, and the light steam seam 2 sticks really good to this. You can reposition, but it doesn't move. And so I'm just going to pull this guy, pull the paper off this guy, and stick him down, and then we'll be ready to iron. Okay, I am going to take this over to my iron, and the light steam seam 2 calls for a 10-second press. So I'm going to be pressing for a hot minute over there. So I'm going to get this all pressed down. Okay, now that it is all ironed down, I kind of checked around it to make sure there weren't any parts that didn't get stuck down. It all seems to be stuck down. So I'm going to be approaching this project a little bit differently. We're not going to have any binding. What I've done is I've cut my backing here, I've cut my batting, and I've got my top, and they're all cut to the exact same size. And I'm going to layer my top onto my batting. And then I'm going to put my backing on top. We'll do right sides together. And then I'm going to sew them together at a 1/2 inch. I'm going to leave an opening at the bottom, and then I'm going to turn it. And then so I'll sew the seam shut in the end, and I'll have a 1/4 inch seam all the way around, and then we'll do my free motion quilting on the inside of that. So that's how I'm going to approach this quilt. Okay, I've got my backing, my top, and my batting all layered here, ready to go to the machine. I'm going to mark a 6-inch opening in the center of the bottom of this piece. So here's the center. I'm going to go on 3 inches. I'm using my friction pen because it will disappear in heat. So I'm going to sew a 1/2 inch just so I catch everything. A 1/2 inch from this all the way around over to this point. Okay, I'm all set up over here at my machine. I've got my walking foot in so that I'm not pushing my fabrics. And I've got my Superior Thread So Fine thread and a 90-14 needle. And I'm going to sew a 1/2 inch from this point all the way around to the other point that I made a mark on. Okay, you probably noticed I backstitch at my corners, and I like to do that because when I trim it, it makes the corner a little stronger. So I'm not pulling threads out when I'm turning it. So I'm going to go over, I'm going to cut my seam down now to a 1/4 inch, and I'm going to turn it and I'm going to iron it. So I'm going to trim my seam here to a 1/4 inch. I'm not going to do that where I'm turning it because I want that extra fabric to help me turn the seam around. And then in the corners, I'm going to use my scissors and start cutting closer so that my corner turns out and is square. I'm gonna use my little purple thing here to push my corners out. And this is where it helps to have double stitched or back stitched these corners so that when you're pushing you don't lose those threads. Okay, so my purple thing has a little point on the end of it that I use to push those corners out. Okay, I am going to go back to the iron and iron this down. And I'm going to fold this under and get it ironed down also. So that's what it's going to look like. Okay, we've got our turkey turned and I've ironed down these seams flat. And so what I want to do now is go over and I want to sew 1/4 of an inch all the way around and shut this opening up, and then we can applique the rest of it. So one thing I do before I start any quilting is I get scrap pieces of my material and batting and I put them through to make sure that my tension and everything else is good and that the two threads I'm using will cooperate with each other. And for sewing around the outside of this, I just did a straight stitch and I've got my walking foot in and everything looks great with that. So I'm going to start down here at the bottom where I'm going to close it in, and that's where I'm going to start stitching. And I'm going to do 1/4 of an inch around the entire quilt. Okay, our little quilt is now closed up. So we can change out our feet. I'm going to use my quilting foot, and I'm going to be free motion my raw edge quilting all the way around here. So I'm going to show you how I am going to do that. So now that I have my free motion quilting, or the machine set up for me free motion quilting, I've taken my practice piece and I've done a couple of stitches here where I'm doing curves, because that's what I'm going to be doing on my machine, to see how the top stitch and the bottom stitch look and if I need to work on my tension. So I did, between this one and this one, have to loosen my top thread just a little bit, but it looks good now. It doesn't look like either thread is pulling. So I'm gonna say that my machine is good to go, and I'm gonna start doing raw edge applique over here. So I'm going to start in the middle and I'm going to do my turkey, and that's just, to me, for me, I feel like that's going to just kind of cement everything in place, is by doing it here in the middle. So I'm going to just start down here at the bottom and I'm just going to go around the very edge of my turkey. Okay, got my turkey done. So now I'm going to work on the features on the inside of my turkey. So my eyes, I need to raw edge around the edge of all my pieces, but for my eyes I want to have little pupils in there, so I'm going to raw edge around and then I'm going to go up and give them a little pupil. So I might have to come back. I could have planned out my thread. It's a variegated thread and his pupils aren't they don't stand out very much, but I'll come back later and figure that out. I'm just going to do my raw edge applique now around all the beak, this little red thing, and his tie. Okay, I've got the center done, and now I'm going to move on to the feathers. So we want a raw edge applique around the feather, and then I want to raw edge applique around the bottom here, because I want to be able to have like a circle around, make it just all stand out from each other. So and then I want to do a line up here for the feather. So I'm going to try to work this way, up and around, come down, and then come back to the middle, go up and come back down, and then go back to this feather. Okay, so I pulled the dark part of my thread, my variegated thread through, and I'm going to go back up here in the eyes and redo his, and go over his pupils a little more. Make them a little darker. There, they'll stand out a little better. So now all that's left to do is do some free motion quilting out here in the outside of the bird. So I'm going to do that. I think I'm just going to do some swirls. Needle down. Okay, so I started my free motion quilting, and you can see that I've just kind of done some swirls and stuff around. It's just kind of random, and I'm about halfway through. We have finished this quilt. That's really all there is to it. Trim it up, snip off the back parts. Even got a turkey on the back of it. Looks like I got myself a wild thread here. So if you've never free motion quilt, don't be afraid of it. If it's whatever you like, whatever you want to do, It's gonna look beautiful. A lot of people will appreciate what you've done. Little turkey eyes need to have a lot of threads. Pretty cool. There we go, no time at all. You got a cute little Turkey Trot Table Topper. Put steam seam on all your pieces. Iron it down. Sandwich the back, the batting, and the front. Sew it, turn it, iron it, and then sew it shut all the way around. And then you're off to the races, just appliquing around all the pieces here. And then free motion, whatever you want out here. And it will turn out super cute and you don't have to do any binding. So I hope you found this informational and I hope you make this. I would love to see it if you made it. If you did different colors for your feathers, if you did all one color, put a picture up on my Facebook page. Show me what you did. And if you like this video and you want to see more videos of things that I have created, head on over to Canary Quilts on YouTube and on canaryquilts.com and you can sign up for all my free patterns. And thank you for watching this video.